Differences between this book and the last one. We cried a lot more in this book.
Gosh,
This is a really raw, I'm doing it now. It was raw for us. God required us to share our own stuff and see our struggles.
We did something different in this devotional as well, and it's called the Ask series. Talk about that.
She was wrestling with some things. I was wrestling with some things. I was so stuck, I had to call her and say, here's where I'm stuck, and then found out she was really stuck in almost the same place at the same time.
Meaning you're seeing certain passages of the Gospels that are challenging and that you don't have good answers for, and they're like, I don't like this passage.
Yeah, and so, yes, and we're honest about that. But something that you'll see in season 2 is you do see Jesus preaching and ministering to people. The thing for me is when it came to Jesus' teaching on prayer, it really fleshed out of me that I struggle with prayer because I prefer to pray prayers I know will be answered in the affirmative, because there have been a few times in my life where the prayers were not answered in the affirmative and had to do with my kid in particular. I'm just going to really quickly read we have a little introduction to the Ask series. It says, some verses in the Bible are harder to understand than others, especially the ones about asking God for stuff. For your sake and our own, we wrestled and prayed and even cried our way through this next section, which is why the following pages might feel wonky. We're bringing some of our own heartbreak and confusion to bear in effort to 1, understand, 2, accept, and 3, embrace what Jesus taught the disciples about asking. Amanda wrote the first 2, Kristen wrote the second 2, and Dallas helped, but we're all in this together. Buckle up. Theological rough road ahead.
So you keep glancing at this particular devotional. Is this one of the ones that you wrote that kind of resonated with you the most?
The devotion's called Desperate, and I just share how I can identify with this guy because that's just who I was this parent. I identify with this parent because I was this parent. Our youngest daughter was born with a severe cranial deformity that caused neurological damage, and that's just a whole journey that my husband and I walked through for many years, and just knowing that desperate need of just healing Jesus. And this guy didn't know who Jesus was, but he knew what Jesus could do. So he goes to Jesus because he hears that Jesus can heal. And that's kind of how my journey was. I didn't know Jesus personally, but I knew enough to know that he could heal. So that's honestly what brought me to a relationship with Christ. As many of you can attest, nothing will bring you to the end of yourself faster than a sick or special needs child. This was the journey on which the Lord saw fit to take my husband and me. And it worked. Entrusting us with this fragile human with severe cranial deformities and neurological damage forced us to see life through a different lens. Pretense was no longer an option. My heart couldn't have been more vulnerable. Lots of time was wasted thinking and worrying and fearing the worst. I became acutely aware of my need for Jesus. Suddenly, I couldn't get to him fast enough. No fancy prayers were involved. I cried out to him and pleaded with raw, often unintelligible words that resembled, please, Lord, just please.
And I will say, as we're talking about differences between this book and the last one, we cried a lot more in this book. This is a really raw, I'm doing it now. It was raw for us. God required us to share our own stuff and see our struggles. So we're not asking anyone else to do what God hasn't already made us do in going through it.
And so your connection to the royal official whose child needed rescue is the connection that we are hoping you have as well when you read these, that you are able to connect with those who had this desperation 2,000 years ago, in the hopes that if you can connect with the desperation they felt and the problems they felt and the questions they raised, you can then connect with the answer and with the solution and with the rescue that Jesus did provide. That's the whole point of the show. That's the whole point of these devotionals.
We're honest in here, and we wanted to struggle alongside our readers. But I will tell you that in doing the Ask series for me, and in what I brought to it, and then what Kristen brought to it, it all came together in a way that has changed my view of prayer and really unlocked some things for me.
So the bad news is, in this devotional, we take you through some hard things, some personal things that you guys have gone through, some hard questions, some verses that we think are troubling on their surface. The good news is there's answers.
Yeah, always
Is
answers.
that-
When you really want to know Jesus, what does it mean to really follow Jesus? It means working through some of the harder things. And the beautiful thing is he meets us in that and works through it with us. But he's intentional sometimes about putting things in front of us to wrestle with.